This matters here. We have Tinsley Ellis in the studio. How are you today, Tinsley? Where are you?
Good morning. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, USA.
How are things over there?
A little cold and wet outside. People getting ready for the holidays
Oh, yeah.
and having a quiet morning. Happy to be talking to you.
Well, similar weather here in Scotland, so you'll be pleased
Yes.
to know. Right, I'm going to take you way back, way
Way
back,
back. Way
way
back.
back in time. Tinsley Ellis, why did you choose to be a musician in the first place?
Well, my story is very similar to many others of my age. I had heard music on the radio, bands like The Ventures and maybe Lonnie Mack and maybe a little bit of the Beach Boys. And then there was a television show here in America called the Ed Sullivan Show. And you know what I'm about to say. 1964, February, the Beatles. The Beatles came on the Ed Sullivan Show, and I heard the music and the twanging guitars and the singing and people screaming and the songs and the look of the band. And I begged my parents for a guitar, and they got me a guitar. And so everything started with the Beatles for me in 1964.
So a bit of rock and roll then.
Right. And then from the Beatles, it seemed like every other band that was on the radio for that year was from London, and the Rolling Stones and the Animals and the Yardbirds, and they were all playing this music that I loved. And I started looking to see who wrote the songs, and it said Chester Burnett and McKinley Morganfield and Willie Dixon. And that's how I found out about blues.
Are you from a musical family?
Church music and, hymns and singing and choirs and things like that. And of course, in the American South, church music is influenced a lot by what they call spirituals and music of not only Caucasian, but African American influences in spirituals. And so there's a little bit in that in my music as well.
Guitar wise, are you self-taught in guitar?
Well, I'm completely self-taught. If you put a piece of written music in front of me, I would look at it and then I would say,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Just looks like dots and lines on a piece of paper to me.
And singing wise, and you sung in a choir, is that the
Yes.
background to your singing voice?
Yes. I sang and I was a baritone
Mm-hmm.
in the first in the church youth choir and then in high school in the glee club. So probably not the coolest thing for a teenager to do, but it helped in the long run to have a little bit of training in the singing groups.
Did you feel that at the time? Did you feel it a bit strange doing that? I mean, what were your friends doing?
They were well, I did sports too. I had a pretty normal childhood, but doing stuff kids do, crazy stuff.
Yeah. And when were you first on stage?
When I was 12 years old, and it was I was in what they call the sixth grade, which is before high school here,
Yeah.
and they had a talent show, and I played I think it would have been, yeah, it was an electric guitar, some kind of something from a department store. It wasn't a Fender or a Gibson. I threw a little amplifier that was about this big, and I played that and sang, and another guy played on a snare drum, and we played Eleanor Rigby by the Beatles, and we played I'm Not Your Stepping Stone by the Monkees. And I thought we were great. And afterwards, one of the teachers said, that was the most out of tune guitar I've ever heard. So there's a tie-in between that and blues, because blues is not exact either.
When did you first think, well, I'm going to play the blues?
Well, I was listening to records with a friend of mine. We were about 15 years old, and we were listening to something like Al Cooper, Mike Bloomfield Super Sessions or something. And my friend's older brother came into the room, and he was a real know-it-all. He was like 17 years old or something. And he said, well, if you like Mike Bloomfield and Johnny Winter and Cream, there's a guy you gotta go see because he's the one they're all getting this music from. And I said, "Well, who is it we gotta go see?" And he said, "You gotta go see BB King." And I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what BB King meant or didn't know it was a person's name. And it turns out that BB King was performing. This was in a time where BB King would play for a week at a time in a little bar, you know, in a hotel or something. And he was playing in the lounge of a hotel in North Miami Beach, down near where I grew up in South Florida. And they had on the Saturday afternoon, if you played there for a week, the band would have to do something. I'm sure the band hated doing this, but they had to do a teen matinee. They shut down the bar and just served Coca-Cola and soft drinks, and teenagers could come in there to the lounge for the afternoon, like 3 in the afternoon on a Saturday during their week-long engagement. And I sat right in the front row and looking up there and seeing the real blues for the first time. And all of a sudden, I could see where Duane Allman was coming from, and Peter Green, and of course, Eric Clapton, all my heroes. And then BB greeted us in the lobby for what seemed like hours, and talked to us. He was so nice, and he broke a guitar string, and I got to keep his broken guitar string, which I have.
You still got
It's about 10
yeah?
feet behind me right here, and on a tape to a post. He was giving out postcards to all the kids, and I took that guitar string and I taped it to the postcard. And then after that, back then, you know, it wasn't like they were playing in really big places or anything, and you could sit right at their feet. So I sat right at the feet of BB King, and I sat right at the feet of Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and Victoria Spivey and anyone who was playing at the time. That would have been in, you know, the early 1970s. And of course, they're all gone now. Then I got with Alligator Records and I was able to see a lot more people that didn't come to South Florida. They weren't famous enough, you know, and I sat in with them. I sat in with Otis Rush and Buddy Guy and Coco Taylor and Sun Seals and anyone you can think of from the 1980s that was playing. And I was the kid. Well, I'm not the kid anymore, but I
Yeah.
was the kid, and that was my my beginnings with blues music.
And what kind of advice did you get in your musical career?
Well, my parents didn't want me to do it.
Right.
No, they did not want me to do music. They wanted me to be a Methodist minister or a lawyer or something like that, where I would have a steady income. And they told me that if I played in a band, that I would be around loose women and alcohol and drugs. And they were right. They were pretty much right. And that didn't really talk me out of doing it. I did it against their wishes, and then it worked out.
And what advice did you get from other artists at that time? I mean, you must have been like a sponge at that age, just taking everything in.
Well, they really didn't give me too much advice. They would answer questions and get their picture made with me and give me autographs, and sometimes, not very often, but sometimes they would, you know, have more of a conversation with me. But I learned a long time ago that with the older blues men, of course, there none of them around pretty much anymore except for Buddy Guy, but I learned to let them do all the talking. They didn't want some little white kid, you know, yapping and
Mm.
talking. And I learned that the hard way. I remember the early 1980s, like 1981, I was on tour with John Lee Hooker, and it was before he had the Healer album, so he was playing little bars
Uh-huh.
and little places. And I remember one time down near Macon, Georgia, that only 10 people came to hear us play. And so John Lee Hooker sent the band down from the stage, and he just played by himself up there. And his band said he hasn't ever done this. He did that in the 60s, but in the early 80s, he just felt like playing some low-down blues, and it was just John Lee Hooker tapping his foot and singing, and that stuck in my mind. But the point is that the advice he gave me, and John Lee had a little bit of a speech impediment, just a slight one. He would stutter stammer a little bit. And so John Lee Hooker, I was backstage talking to him after doing you know, several shows with him, and I thought he was my friend, but it turned out he tolerated me at best, and he said to me, he said, "You talk too much." He said, "I talk too much." So it was then that I realized that with the older musicians, you kind of had to let them do all the talking. Kinda like I'm doing now, because 'cause I'm an older
Right,
John Lee
yeah.
Hooker was probably my age when he told me that, and then later after he put out the Healer album, and I opened for him at the Beacon Theater in New York City, and he sold out the Beacon Theater, and it
Right.
was me and Buddy Guy and John Lee Hooker, and I was so happy that John Lee Hooker ended his career and his life on such a high note to sell out the Beacon Theater on Broadway in New York City. Usually, the highlights are not financial.
Mhm.
The highlights are not, radio airplay or press. The highlights are when my heroes have invited me to join them on stage.
And how did you get a gig with Rush?
Well, I actually was opening act for Otis Rush,
Right,
and I was the opening act, and he was always nice enough to, call members of if he liked the music,
right.
and he was a guy that Otis Rush was a man that he was, a little moody. He had different moods, and sometimes he was very friendly, and other times he didn't wanna really talk to people much. But we would hang out in the clubs in Chicago. I had moved to Chicago in the mid-80s, and so I would go to all his shows because he was one of my favorites, and if he was in a good mood, he would let me get up on stage and play with him after opening up for him.
And how did that feel for you at the time?
Oh, it felt great, and he was very generous with guitar solos. He would give me the nod, and I would play my
Right.
solo and try to keep it, as traditional, and Buddy Guy the same way. If he'd give me the nod, when I back him up, I kind of
Right.
stay back in the back and kind of lay it down, and then when he'd give me a nod, I would do my thing, and they were encouraging to me, and that felt good.
And you got snapped up by Alligator.
1988.
And how did that happen?
Well, I was in a band in Atlanta called the Heart Fixers. The Heart Fixers made 4 albums, 1 album on a tiny label called Southland Records here in Atlanta, and then 3 albums on the Landslide label, Michael Rothschild's label. One of those albums was with blues shouter Nappy Brown, who we rediscovered. We rediscovered Nappy Brown. He was singing in church in South Carolina, and I had played some of his music when I was in a band called the Alley Cats, and so I was familiar with Nappy Brown, and when Michael Rothschild and
Right.
Landslide got a cassette tape that somebody in South Carolina sent him, I said, "Well, I know Nappy Brown. We played some of his music in the Alley Cats." And so the Michael put Nappy Brown together with the Heart Fixers, and we played up and down the East Coast and made the Tore Up album, and that's what brought me to the attention of Alligator Records. And we played overseas to the 100 Club and in Belgium with Nappy, and of course people came out. There was, there's always been a great interest in American roots music
Right.
overseas, and they knew who Nappy Brown was, and they were singing his songs, and he was so happy, and that's what brought me to the attention of Alligator Records, and that was in 1984.
And what does success mean for you then, in life in general, but being an artist?
Well, to me, success means that that I'm able to do nothing but play music to make a living from the late 1970s till now, coming up on 50 years,
Hmm.
nothing but music. And I would say that's success, in blues or any kind of other roots music. You don't really get on TV much or, in big magazines, really big ones, where, to get in a big magazine in America, you have to do something outrageous, and,
Right.
break out of rehab and run over somebody with a car or something like that, or, the wilder the better.
Yeah.
At the age of 60, I'm 68 years old. I'm probably not going to be the voice of youth rebellion. So, success to me, I have to keep it, pretty basic, you know, so supporting myself, playing my own music, and being on Alligator Records, that's my definition of success.
And what motivates you? What gets you out of bed in the morning and go, right?
Well, I'm speaking to you from my home here, and right over there, I've got my recording studio where I
Ah,
write the songs and sometimes record them for the albums. And so, get out of bed, have a cup of coffee, maybe eat an egg. Then I go in there and turn all the equipment on and get my Martin guitar, my National Steel, because I pretty much only perform acoustic, record acoustic nowadays. That's my love, and get those things going. And I'm working on a new song. It's got the groove of R.L. Burnside, and I was watching this video with, Kenny Brown that used to
mhm.
accompany R.L. Burnside, and Kenny learned so much from R.L., and I was watching this video, and I got the guitar tuned just right, and I was kinda watching Kenny play and learning his take on the hill country blues, so I'm gonna work on that song today.
And what made you move from electric to acoustic? I mean, so many albums. You made so many albums with electric.
Well, I would put maybe one acoustic song on each album or try to over the
Mm,
years. And then during my show, I would, perform, 6 or 7 electric songs, and I would bring out the National Steel guitar, resonator guitar, and maybe do a Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters song or something, or maybe an original, then put the electric guitar on and finish out the show. Well, I found that when I would play, I just couldn't wait for that part of the show. Yeah, I was just so
right.
excited to do the acoustic part of the show. And also, fans were saying, "Are you ever going to make an album of that?" So I had done some specialty type albums over the years, like a live album is a specialty. And in 2013, I did an all instrumental album called Get It, and that was a specialty album. So I came to Alligator and said, I want to do an all acoustic album, a specialty album,
Mhm.
all acoustic, which turned out to be the Naked Truth album. And Bruce at Alligator said, well, those kind of things work better when you're famous. And I said, well, Bruce, everything works better when you're famous. Everything does. So he let me do the Naked Truth album, and I did a tour. I did hundreds of shows all over America and Canada, and a lot of shows with Marcia Ball, and with, she would play acoustic piano, which is a
Mhm.
one to hear her play on a grand piano. That's a religious experience. And I play my acoustic guitar. And so we did the one album, Naked Truth, and it did very well. And like probably as well as anything I could have done acoustically. And since then, I haven't done except for songwriting. I've written some electric songs for other artists like Mike Zito and Blood Brothers, and Joe Bonamassa produced a couple of those. And so I still record. I still record songs electrically as a songwriter, but not as a performer.
Right. And your persona off stage to on stage, is it the same or is it different when you're going solo?
It's about the same. I've consolidated that, and I think that's what works best for me. I don't really have like a flamboyant look or a flamboyant personality. Not much wardrobe involved. Dress up a little bit depending on where I'm playing, and that suits me just fine.
And do you prefer intimate venues or festivals, or does it not matter?
Well, I do a mixture of all of
Mm,
them. I do a lot of blues rooms, listening rooms, but I've played for some really large audiences at
mm,
festivals too. And at those shows, I emphasize more of the up tempo, more R.L. Burnside foot stomping thing. And I stomp my foot on the stage and tell the sound man, turn my foot up. And that becomes the drum, and people dance. And that was
yep.
encouraging to see people dancing. But if I'm playing at a listening room, I will do what I'm doing now, which is talk about the old blues and a lot of storytelling. There's
Mhm.
a lot of storytelling in the show, so it's acoustic songs and stories.
Let's talk about the new album then, moving on.
Yes.
Right, your songwriting, do you have a process as such? Is it a melody? I mean, you've got a studio there. Do you just go straight in the studio with a guitar and the song comes, the lyrics? What is it?
Almost always I come up with the guitar lick first, almost always. But when I'm driving around or, just sitting around a hotel room, or I'll come up with a song title, and I keep a list on my phone of all those song titles. And so when I get the music, in my head, or make a little recording, whether it's on my phone or in my studio, depending on where I am, and I have a good guitar lick, and I go, I'm going to put some words with that. Well, then I get on my phone and I look at my list of song titles, what might match that lick, and then I take it from there. So the music almost always comes first.
So for the new album, what was the production like? I mean, what was the process of putting it out?
Well, it's stripped down. I play all the instruments, and there's not many instruments. Naked Truth, it was completely live, just me tapping my foot at playing either the Martin or the National steel guitar, and then singing with nothing added except for, I think there was hand claps on one song, Devil in the Room. That was Naked Truth. And on this album, I started with that same thing, but I added a little bit of extra. I played mandolin on 3 songs to add a little bit of the little mandolin to fill it out a little bit. There's a little more percussion on some of the songs. There's a foot stomp always, and then hand claps, and I beat on a drum and tap on a glass on one song. So there's a little more percussion, and then there's piano on 3 songs as well.
And let's talk about some of the songs then.
Yes.
First song, Hoodoo Woman. Where did that come from?
Well, Buddy Guy and Junior Wells, actually it was a Junior Wells album, he had a song called Hoodoo Man Blues. So I thought I would write a song about the hoodoo woman.
Right.
And it's got a lot of stuff on it about, the fortune tellers in New Orleans, and the crystal ball, and the burning candles, and tarot cards, and tea leaf readings, and things like that. So lyrically, that's what it is. But the music on that song is right out of the R.L. Burnside Hill Country sound.
And To a Hammer. Can you describe what the Bentonia tuning is about?
Well, the Bentonia tuning, that's what is most Bentonia, Mississippi, is most associated with Skip James. And that song is in the Bentonia tuning, which is D minor. And the first guy in Bentonia to really popularize that, although he never made a recording, was Henry Stuckey. And Henry Stuckey had gone to World War I, and he was over in, I believe, Holland, or maybe France, and heard soldiers playing in a tuning that he'd never heard before. And they showed him the D minor tuning, and he took that back to Bentonia, Mississippi, and taught Skip James to play in that tuning, Jimmy Duck Holmes to play in that tuning, and several others. Recently, I went to Bentonia and got a guitar lesson from Jimmy Duck Holmes, and he taught me a lot about the Bentonia sound. It's very moody, being in a minor key and down low. And of course, Skip James is the most famous of the Bentonia musicians, but Jimmy Duck Holmes is still alive and well and running his Blue Front Cafe.
Long time.
John Lee Hooker, Clarksdale, Mississippi. And, like I said earlier, I had done a lot of shows with John Lee Hooker, and that guitar beat, that guitar riff that he put in the sound of modern music, everybody from the Rolling Stones to Slim Harpo to ZZ Top has used that guitar riff, and I used it on that song.
And Sad Song?
Well, that's the only song I've ever recorded that doesn't have guitar on it. That's just me playing a mandolin, stomping my foot, and then I added hand claps to it. And that song would be more, I would say, of Piedmont blues, and it reminds me a lot of the music that I would hear as a child going up into the mountains. Georgia and Florida is pretty much all on the coast. There's no mountains in Florida where I grew up. But in Georgia, which is right next to Florida, you've got the coast, like Savannah, and then you go and then it gets more hilly, and then it turns out to these big Appalachian mountains. And I'd go up there with my family to a cabin, and I would hear this mountain music, and it was African American and Caucasian music, and music of the Piedmont. And I would say that song was influenced by the music of the Piedmont.
And then another, The Trouble with Love.
Trouble with Love is Bentonia blues, very influenced by Skip James.
How did the song start? How did the lyrics?
Oh, with the guitar riff, of course. And then I had some lyrics, had the song titled The Trouble with Love. The
Right.
trouble with love is a thing we can't understand. And so I just matched the lyrics to the guitar. And I love doing that song live. I've been doing that song live for a while at my shows.
Yeah, I was wondering how many had been road tested. I mean, they're all yours as well. I mean, you wrote every one of them. It's great.
Yeah, I can both albums, Naked Truth and Labor of Love. I can perform every song live, and I
Right.
haven't been able to do that with the electric songs because there'd always be the addition of backup singers or lots of keyboards or horns, and it would sound more like a production. Well, nowadays the albums and the shows are more similar than ever, and I play every song off of both albums, and that's a nice thing, all 25 songs.
And Sunnyland, where does that come from?
More of a Sun House thing, I would say, definitely with the National Steel tuned to open G and slide, brass slide, and foot stomp, and then I added a big bass drum onto it just to make a party out of it.
It's got a great feel. The whole album's got a great feel. Just really edgy in some parts, quiet in others. I mean, it's got so much.
It's all Mississippi music, even though, I mean, Mississippi's not that far from here, and I love going over there and playing, and my record collection, pretty much everything comes from over there by that river, by that Mississippi River.
Yeah. Well, Sweet Iced Tea, I mean, that's self-explanatory. Your food.
Yeah, that's R.L. Bride. And that song has a little more production. Turn the foot up loud in it to make it sound almost like a bass drum, and then I tap it on a sweet iced tea glass, and there's going to be a nice video with that too, which will come out. We just released the first video for the Hoodoo Woman song, and that just came out. That came out December 1st. That's the first video. The second video will be for another song on the album, and then the third video is Sweet Iced Tea.
So that's how you're waterfalling some of the songs.
Yes. So this will be a little different album in that Alligator Records has shot 3 videos, produced videos, and that's a big part of promotion nowadays. You put that on the internet, and in the first week, Hoodoo Woman came out a week ago, and in the first week, over 10,000 views of the video on YouTube. We're all very encouraged by that. Of course, when a pop music band comes up, they might get 1 million views, and in blues, 10,000. That's
10,000
like
a
a
lot.
gold record or something.
I know it's a totally different way now of getting your music out.
Yeah, I don't know what works, so I want to do as much of it as I can. I don't know what to do, so I got to do it all.
Talk about I'd Rather Be Saved.
I'd Rather Be Saved, Bentonia tuning, and that is inspired by Jimmy Duck Holmes, because he will play that groove and that tempo, and it very hypnotic sounding. And that's another song I enjoy playing live, and very spooky song. And I have about 5 of those type songs on the album, so I had to put them in. I didn't want them to be right next to each other on the album, so I had to space them out.
Right.
The Bentonia, the D minor eerie tuning. And that one comes about halfway through the album.
They say the last song, a spiritual Lay My Burden Down. Where did that come from?
I'm sorry, which song?
Lay My Burden Down. I mean,
Oh,
that
that's
sounds really traditional, but
yes, that's music that I grew up with. That's a spiritual, and it just sounded like something that I've heard ever since I was a baby, in church music, and it's a combination of that, and I would say probably the guitar tuning of it is something like Fred McDowell would have done,
mm.
open E and slide guitar. But slide guitar not played on the National Steel, but slide guitar played on the Martin, the wooden guitar. So it makes it a little bit different than some of the other slide guitar songs.
And how did you learn slide guitar in the first place?
I'm sorry.
How did you learn to play the slide guitar in the first place?
Oh, well, once again, because of my age, the first time I ever heard slide guitar, well, actually, the first time I ever heard it was Hawaiian music. And that would be in like movies or something like that, or I never saw anybody actually play Hawaiian music, but there was a Hawaiian slide guitar where you put the guitar in your lap and you play it with a steel thing. And that's probably the first time I ever heard it. But the first time I wanted to play it, I was listening to records and I heard this strange, slide, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was. And you know what it was? It was the Rolling Stones doing the Red Rooster. And
Right.
I think Brian Jones played that. I think Brian Jones played the slide on that song. And so once again, the music of London, England influences me over here where the music comes from. It's the strangest
I
thing.
know.
We're happy. Thank you for the music. Thank you for showing us our music. But but yeah, and that was the first time I ever heard that. And then somebody, I think, back then you didn't have the internet or anything. You couldn't learn about it, on my cell phone, I'd go on there and I can find all the information. I call it the rectangle of knowledge. The cell phone is the rectangle of
Right.
knowledge. Well, we didn't have the rectangle of knowledge then. You had to find somebody that was older that would have the patience and the desire to tell you. And I think some older guy said, that's slide guitar. And then the first time I ever saw a slide guitar was the Allman Brothers band, Dwayne Allman, and he was so good. And around that same time, I saw Muddy Waters doing the playing slide guitar. So I kind of, between I was able to see people do it live, and then I did a lot of shows. Starting in the early 1980s, I've done a lot of shows with Bob Margolin. And Muddy Waters taught Bob Margolin, Muddy Waters sat down with Bob Margolin and showed him stuff. Now, how about that? Well, Bob Margolin has sat down with me and showed me what Muddy Waters taught him. So a
Wow.
lot of times it's that face-to-face thing that makes it good. And you can't really learn that as good. There's not the back and forth, just watching a YouTube of somebody. You can't get it. You have to have that face-to-face thing. And Bob had it with Muddy, and I had it with Bob. So it gets passed down like that.
And what does the blues mean to you as a person?
Well, I liked it when Willie Dixon, in an interview, Willie Dixon said, the blues is the facts of life set to music. And you have happy times and you have sad times. You have lonely times. You have times where you've got a pocket full of money. You've got times where you don't have any money. There's times of love. There's times of no love. And that's the way life is. And that's the way the theme of blues songs are. The blues holds a mirror up to life.
And what would you say to a 15-year-old Tinsley Ellis about the music business?
Well, I wish I had known then what I know now, but it doesn't work like that. You can't go back in time. But I had a lot of older musicians were patient with me, and they would tell me that I needed to write my own music instead of just being a copycat. Because for many years I would learn the exact guitar solos and the exact equipment of people like Freddie King and Cream, play that note for note. Well, somebody said, well, you got to write your own stuff. And I didn't really do that until I was almost 30 years old. So I wish I had started writing earlier.
Right.
That would be good advice. And other lifestyle advice is, take care of your body, don't go, because when you're young, I mean, I was a wild man when I was in the heart fixtures, especially, and then on later than that too, to tell you the truth. But it'll catch up with you. It'll catch
Yeah.
up with you. So you got to have those life experiences so you can sing about them, but you got to snap out of it at some point. So I probably should have done that a little earlier too.
And have you any stories from the road that you can tell?
Well, I have lots of story. I wouldn't even know where to start. There's been just so many things that have happened in my 50 years on the road, almost 50 years. I remember one time we showed up at a festival, and it was at well, they used to call it a nudist colony, but it's a clothing optional resort. And so we showed up, and the entire audience was nude. And of course, I wore clothes, and Bernard Allison was at that. He was on that show as well, so he could tell you that it's true. So we played at a nudist colony, and it was called the Nudie Blues, not the Moody Blues, but the
Yeah.
Nudie Blues. And then after the concert, it was up north. It was in Michigan, and it got kind of cold, and I sold every T-shirt I had, and so there were people walking around with nothing but my T-shirt
Yeah.
on. Weird shit like that.
Brilliant.
There's just been it's always something different, and sometimes it's funny stuff, and sometimes it's sad stuff. But that was a funny story.
You still obviously love the road.
Oh, I love it. I've got a big tour for
Yeah.
Labor of Love, and I hope I can cross the ocean again and bring I haven't done any shows, as a solo acoustic performer,
Mm.
and I would love to and tell my stories. There's a lot of talking during my show, a lot of stories, and I'm a talker, and I'm a singer, and I'm a player, and I want to bring it over there and do it again.
You should do. You should do. Get yourself to UK.
Well, I'm just the musician. My business people would have to set it up,
Yeah.
and out of my that's not in my job description.
So what does the future bring? Have you got collaborations, any projects coming up?
Just a lot of shows.
Mhm.
The Labor of Love tour is gonna take me coast to coast. I just got back from Seattle, Washington, and San Francisco by airplane. Of
Ah,
course, I'm gonna drive the next tour and do the
cool.
whole country. I've done all 50 states and most provinces of Canada and South America.
And will this tour be called the Labour of Love tour then?
Yes, it is Labor of Love
Right.
tour, because when you play blues or any other roots music, it's truly a labor of love. You don't get much out of it besides love.
Yeah. And have you got anything to say to the Blues Matters readers one last
Well,
time?
just hope people will check out the album. There's so many ways to listen to music now. It's never been better for the listener. You can listen to music on your telephone or in your automobile or on CD or on vinyl. People buy vinyl records. So
Yeah.
I drag those all over America, in my car. I have a whole trunk of them sometimes, like 500 vinyl albums.
Great.
Very inconvenient, but people want them. So just listen to the music. And if it gives you some joy, I'll be happy to.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, we'll stop there, I think. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.